Okay, here we are, Dr.
Okay.
Monti.
Even if I move like this, no
That's
problem.
fine. Everything. Well, actually, your top of your head gets cut off. So stay about. Well, I can change. I can change this. That's approximately it. We want your fine face. That's good.
Good.
So here we are in Verici, right?
Yeah.
Verici.
Very cheap.
And we have met before many times, but this is ICCF-8, right?
Exactly.
And we are here to talk about all the experiences of Dr. Monti and his other knowledge of the Philadelphia Project, the transmutation, ancient alchemy, etc., etc. And just before I do that, I just be absolutely sure how much time I have left. Okay. I'm a perfectionist. Let's see. Excellent. And this may be useful. The purpose of this tape is to record the details, some of the details, because we'd be here 6 hours to get the whole story. But to begin to get the big picture so that perhaps we can jointly share in a project, which I have thought about for quite a while, and apparently you have thought about for quite a while, which I have thought about for quite a while, and apparently you have thought about for quite a while. Somehow the idea of taking this fantastic story of modern transmutation and alchemy and putting it into a book and a movie. They will be both together.
Yeah.
I think this is when I first thought of that, by the way, I thought that was too extreme. Okay, much too extreme because I remember this was 1992, 3, 4. It wasn't quite enough information yet for me. Now that I see what is happening in cold fusion field, which is the low energy nuclear reaction field, I can see that the reality of the scientific examination is very clear, and that leads me to believe that possibly the ancient alchemy combined with the Bacchus champion Thielander story was also, I mean, I know the story is real, but the results were real. So the first thing I have, I will talk less. I will have you talk more. And but what is your background? First of all, how old are you now? This is May 26, 2000. You're 55.
55.
And where were you born?
Born in Ravenna, Italy. Born in Ravenna, Italy.
Ravenna.
In 1945.
Where, that's near
Near Venice.
Venice, yes, I thought so.
Near Venice, yeah. Once was a town under the domination of. It was the old capital of the Roman Empire. Then became was under Venice, then under the Pope, and finally joined to Italy.
Okay. What kind of training did you have?
Educated in normal scientific lyceum, then University of Bologna, the degree in physics. And I started as the first preparing astrophysical studies. Then I went against the common knowledge about relativity and about nuclear physics. So I was compelled to find other direction of research. So I went to an Institute of Chemistry. So I worked for 3 years in the Institute of Chemistry of Bologna.
This was after you got your first degree, or you had no degree yet?
No, I already did.
What degree?
I was...
Bachelor of Science?
No, in Italy there is not... I was... we call this laurea. And I got my laurea, which I was doctor in physics in 1969.
Doctor in Physics, 1969.
Right.
From the
University of Bologna.
Bologna.
Institute of Physics.
But you didn't believe relativity.
Neither relativity nor the commonly known atomic physics.
Atomic physics.
So I was forced to find myself some ideas for a degree, and I found I worked on for a laurea for a thesis on biophysics. also I had also some knowledge about biophysics, which helped me later. Moreover, when I ended my thesis and I became doctor, the first work that I found was as an assistant of research of the National Research Council in the Institute of Chemistry, where I was for 3 years. Then I moved to where I am now, an Institute of Astrophysics.
Institute for Astrophysics.
Institute of Technology and Study of Extraterrestrial Radiation. Well, I'm.
Where's that?
It's the study of gamma
No,
rays.
but where is it located?
In Bologna, yes.
In Bologna.
Always in Bologna. Never moved from Bologna after I went to the university. Always stayed there. And here again, I came in bad relations because I was an heretic in nearly everything. Heretic. And in 86, in 86, I decided to move completely into the field of nuclear physics. So because at that time I'd already finished my studies about relativity. My papers were ready, but they were only papers 10 years later. Now they are all published. And since 1986, I started studying nuclear physics. I was already very critic in the Bohr theories of the atom. So I studied another model of the atom. Partly I was looking for information about other possible solutions. So I was reading over everything: biophysics, nuclear physics, strange results known and forgotten in physics, like for example alchemy. And then I met the first information about the books written by Louis Kervran, a French researcher who since the 60s was working about a new model of the atom, and that was collecting information about the nuclear low energy, what he called at the time low energy nuclear reactions. He used two terms: low energy nuclear reactions in France, obviously, this time, and also low energy transmutations. I adopted both these words.
Did you ever meet him?
No, because he died in '84. So he died 2 years before I could. I came out to know these books.
Tell me, what was it about? I can see how people would generally become heretical about relativity because there are many paradoxes and strange questions, and the Michelson-Morley experiment wasn't definitive, and all these reasons for doubting relativity. And furthermore, there's a kind of a community of scientific doubters. Okay, but in alchemy, low-energy nuclear reactions, atomic theory, there weren't sort of a field of heretics. There weren't. I mean, there was ancient alchemy and transmutation work, but for my knowledge, except for Kervran, there wasn't a big community of doubters of people who doubted or were heretics about atomic structure. Right?
Not many.
There weren't many. But what made you?
The only one which I met at the time was Kervran. So at the time I was following
in his books.
And I was following mainly the kind of experiment that he suggested, because he was suggesting many experiments which I could control in the biological field mainly, and also in the geological field. He wrote two main books which I already quoted in the paper which was published by Al Fox in 1996. One is transmutation about the English translation to be transmutation in the field of geology and transmutation in biology. Those two books are the main books which I had the occasion to read, and they seemed me very convincing. Not only, but I started making some elementary tests, which convinced me that it was on the right side.
In biology?
In biophysics, biology.
What tests were those?
For example, the making of the three-way in which our body can make calcium through carbon plus silicon plus carbon magnesium plus oxygen and potassium plus hydrogen. These are the three ways in which usually the living bodies makes their cases. He shown a very long and well documented series of tests that he made, because at the time he was in a very important position. He was the director of the scientific control of the health of the workers for the French government in the Sahara. For example, he was controlling the workers in the Sahara desert to look for
Oil exploration.
Oil exploration. Then he has also followed some of the nuclear researches made in Sahara by the French and so on. He was collecting, he was not only, but for example, he also was the man who helped Marie Curie to clean his laboratory, because he told me, in his book he said that they made a vent in which the smokes of the laboratory went to the study to the office of Marie Curie. So when he controlled the study, he found that all the office of Marie Curie was radioactive. So he told Marie Curie to be careful, but it was late because she died by cancer caused by radioactivity.
Right.
She has a long story, and he was well known at the time in France. Also because he was, as I said, the general director of any scientific activity related to, for example, from door technique to health in the work.
Yes.
Or for example, he made good studies of strange deaths of workers in France, which showed him the reality of incredible results in possibilities in the nuclear reactor. I can tell also some of the stories. For example, the one which was not surprising and now it's well known. For example, that he observed that in Sahara Desert the workers would not heat by the sun, even if they worked all the day under the sun. And the only thing that they made was take big pieces of salt, NaCl. So he asked how this could be possible, because no other...
They just had salt? That was what they were mainly having?
They just take a small, big piece of salt and
They would eat it?
Yeah.
The workers in the Sahara? Native workers or people who...
Probably people from both in the Sahara. They were used to this. This is also why the salt is so important in the desert.
Yes.
Because he found that later he tried to collect all the urines of the workers, and he found that they were pissing an enormous amount of potassium.
Yeah.
So he was surprised, and he made the hypothesis that probably they were eating sodium, and through the endothermic reaction, sodium plus oxygen, they could make potassium. Endothermic means that they could use the solar
to cool it.
excess. They could themselves through a nuclear reaction in the body.
He said that.
This is one. It's very interesting.
In his biological transmutation book?
And this was a good example of biological transmutation. Many are listed in his books.
In his books.
Every one of those are very convincing, because I had some notion of biophysics. I knew, for example, that there were big problems to explain the sodium-potassium balance in the body.
Right.
And so one of the hypotheses is that the sodium pump is not a chemical pump, but a nuclear pump, because our heart can work, can cause in the intercellular, the cells have the surface of the cell, have a potential, a voltage enough to cause the transmutation of salt in potassium and vice versa. So the body practically keeps its balance, not through a passage of sodium and potassium, but changing directly sodium into potassium and vice versa.
Right.
This is also why the heart can be so
energetic. So you think the heart is basically a nuclear?
I think yes. As a matter of fact,
did he say that, by the way? Did Kervin say that?
No, this has been. We came to this conclusion with Panos Papas in Vancouver, because he was very well acquainted with the problems of the sodium-potassium balance, and he had already many informations in the sodium-potassium balance, and he observed that with this machine he could change the potassium and sodium balance in the body. It can cure, for example, many people which, for example, have cancer, just reestablishing the correct balance with potassium and calcium in the cell. So this, when I told him, for example, the story that then in the same years, following the studies of Kevran, a Japanese means Tori since his name, but I can give you the right name, the foreign name, made a beautiful experiment showing that with making the vacuum in a glass container. Then it was introducing the N-sodium, then vaporized and eat for half an hour, passing it through the container an electric current. After half an hour, introduced oxygen, and you could observe immediate transmutation of sodium into potassium. This was a test which was among the papers of Tori, which I found because I have to say one thing. Because at the time, fortunately, I was in touch with a biologist in Milano who was a student of Kevran. She knew him.
He knew him.
He was girl. She was trying to repeat with Kevran the test with the hands.
Yes, the
To
hands.
feed the hands without calcium, and after then they gave to the hands potassium, and they could find that they make again the shell.
They make calcium.
Exactly.
Right.
They can make calcium through potassium plus hydrogen.
Right.
These studies were already known to Kevran through the studies of the papers of the scientific journals during the French Revolution.
Right.
Vauquelin, the man with the French, what's his name? His friend, the French friend.
Oh, Biberian.
Biberian
mentioned.
Biberian mentioned that he also know now the story of Vauquelin, because Vauquelin made the first studies of biological transmutation. So Kevran started first also collecting all the information coming from the history, from the scientific writings of the French Revolution.
Right, but he didn't go be earlier than that.
No, but after that he started to collect the information that he could get through his experiment as a controller of the health of all the people in France, all the working people in France, and in the desert too. So this you can read on the Kevran books. He collected all the information which he could get from different fields. He found that also in the past the problem was open, because the Lavoisier was not, his success was not immediate. Since 1845, still in the books of chemistry, the French book, you could find information about the transmutations. But after 1845, all the information disappeared.
Because of Lavoisier?
Because Lavoisier, which was a French follower of the kings,
Yes.
this in his making his research stated that it was not possible to transmute the matter, to make transmutations.
Right.
Then he was beheaded in '94 because he was
1794.
1794,
Right.
yeah, because he was a tax collector for the king, and so the French beheaded him. Vauquelin take his place in as the director of all the scientific researches of chemistry, and he made these beautiful researches. So after the revolution, Lavoisier was rehabilitated, and his theory became a dogma. Nobody could say that the studies of Vauquelin were wrong. But simply in this case, the theories of Vauquelin were abandoned because he was a follower of the revolution. And their reaction decided that Lavoisier was right, and that became a dogma. So all these studies related to transmutation went underground. Not only, but were nearly cancelled also from all the scientific papers. The last time in which Vauquelin is quoted in a French book of chemistry is in the textbook of Regnault of the 1845. After that,
How do you spell that name?
Regnault is the author of this book of
Regnault.
chemistry. Regnault.
Okay.
Regnault.
Renault.
It was very known as the epoch textbook of chemistry. It was the common book for all the universities in France. Until 1845, this text was well known, distributed in all the universities. After that, disappeared. Fortunately, Flaubert says the memory of Regnault, saying in this book, says something about what Vauquelin did, and he takes notice of this. So the information about Vauquelin remained through Flaubert.
Yeah. Is this laughing or are you crying?
Because excuse me.
You're emotional about this.
Yeah. When I discovered all these steps,
Yes.
it was very strange for me. All these feet were connecting, and they were making a concrete
Picture.
picture.
The picture.
It was a big emotion for me because at the time I was still a normal physicist, let's say.
Yes.
So when I
But you began to see the light when you.
I saw that there was something real.
This was in the 80s. You began when you started to really study it.
About around 86.
Okay.
Then I decided to collect all the information. I made, by the time I was invited to a conference in Italy related to the history of physics. So I decided to make the history of the atom. So
History of alchemy.
of the atom.
Oh, history of the atom.
the atom.
Atom, yes.
So I started following all. I remember that I wrote about. I collected about 500 papers, starting from the end of the century, looking for the evolution of the idea of the atom. So I found out the story of Rutherford, the story of Parson, the story of Dieter Newton-Lewis, the start of the story, the papers from Harkins, who made Harkins especially was an American chemist who has, for example, made the first model of the first rigid model of the atom, and he made also a beautiful model of the Mendeleev table on a spiral that by chance I came to see in Chicago in '92 when I went there for a visit.
Yeah, to the champion story.
Yeah. And there I saw the original in a stair. There was in the hall of the stairs. It was placed. I saw the name Harkins, and I found his table of the elements. According to the alpha standard model, which I called alpha standard, but it was already there. I looked all that. I see all the table which is still in the big museum, which is in Chicago.
Yes, Museum of Science and Technology.
Yeah. Yep. So I could find in front of me just the table of Harkins, and because, for example, the thing which I didn't want to say today, the theory of the pure polyneutron, which is what I call the alpha standard, was already made by Harkins.
He came. Well, how could he come up with a theory of polyneutrons? Because polyneutrons.
Because Harkins, following Parson and Lewis, supposed that you can found an order in the structure of the atom.
Yes, an order.
If you introduce some new particles, not discovered, but you could suppose their resistance. One, for example, was the alpha naught, what I call the alpha naught particle.
But this was, wait a second, this was in the 19th century, the 1800s. Are we talking
At
about?
the beginning of the 1900, of the last century.
Yeah, beginning of the 1900s.
Yeah. I found all the information related to this.
Yeah. Okay.
And
this was after radioactivity was known.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
This model was prepared between 1960. Parson made the first hypothesis about the magnetic electron, what they call the model of the ring electron, which is now revived by many people, in 1915. And Harkins made his final comments about the alpha standard model in 1922. Then there were two schools of thought about nuclear physics. The one from Rutherford and the other from the Americans. At the time, America has not so much the importance that it has now.
Has no what?
The importance and
Yes.
the power.
Yeah, it didn't have much power.
Yeah.
Right.
So
it was just
the English point of view became the more the prominent.
right.
But
The Americans were more.
yes, but many were much more brilliant than that, especially Lewis, Parson, Allen, and Harkins. These were very brilliant chemists, which never believed the theory of Bohr, but
While the theory of Bohr was being made, did they attack it or deny it?
oh yes, they decided, they proved also that it was completely wrong. But unfortunately, the position of Bohr, of Rutherford and Bohr, Bohr supported by Rutherford, became the dominant because in 1922, two Nobel Prizes were assigned. One to Bohr for the planetary model, and the second to Einstein for relativity. So those became official science.
Wait a second. Did Einstein also? He got a prize for the photoelectric effect at one
Yes,
point.
but they had.
He didn't get a prize for relativity.
No,
Never.
because nobody believed it, because there were two strong
There was opposition
against relativity.
Right. There was
But
opposition.
in some way, he was able to get the prize.
Right.
Because at the time he was supported by the same group that is now has supported Clinton for the election, the hybrid. You know,
Whatever.
okay. So through the support, because you have to remember that not only Einstein was a Jew, he was a Mason of the Jewish Masonry, especially was a member of the hybrid, but also Bohr was a Jew. His mother, Bohr's mother, was a Jew. So both of them arrived to the Nobel Prize, and they stated that their theories became official science. So Lewis and Archies were part in the second.
Right.
Not only, but at the time, chemistry was more important than physics. So the physics prevailed against chemistry, saying that they found the right
model.
theory.
Correct.
On the contrary, the model of Lewis and Archies was abandoned.
Abandoned.
Following the publications for the following year, I see that in 5-6 years, all the model of Lewis Pasteur and Archies was forgotten. Nobody was quoting them anymore.
Right.
Not only, but Lewis also seemed to have, in a certain sense, forgotten his previous model, because he accepted the fact that he was trying to make by himself permutations. His idea was to enter electrons in the nucleus of Mercury, supposing that one of the electrons could enter in touch with one of the neutrons or the protons, and making a new electron proton, making neutrons. So he could hope to make transmutations. But unfortunately, that's not the right way to make. He was trying to make gold. Right. Unfortunately, he was not able.
Who was it again who was trying to make gold?
Lewis.
Right.
The first attempt, he didn't succeed. And Lewis or Archies, both.
They tried. They both
tried. But they didn't succeed, so they abandoned.
Because they probably thought that would prove their theory.
Yeah. But they were not able to make gold. So they abandoned. Not only, but in these years,
There were other things in science. There were controversies about gold making. There was some Japanese work.
No, at the time, to my knowledge, the idea, because at the time there came out the fact that you can cause transmutations of the elements but this was the Rutherford position, only by high energy physics. On the contrary, Lewis and Archies tried to suppose that you would cause transmutations of the atom also with low energy.
Right. Even though Lavoisier dogma was there.
Yes,
still.
because at the beginning of the century, when there was discovered radioactivity, they could see that transmutations were possible.
Right. So that encouraged.
That caused a new start of the ideas of alchemy.
Right.
So in that period, many papers were written about the possibility of transmutation of the elements, which later were forgotten because considered only possible at high energy.
Right.
But at the time, somebody was in the scientific field, especially in America, was trying to make transmutations by low energy means.
Right.
We are now.
What?
Where we are now?
Oh yes. So we are.
Follow ahead.
Okay.
So
well,
this is what I learned during the years from 96 to 98.
Yeah. Well, you assembled about 500
exactly.
papers. You made a big.
Exactly. So I make a long history path. I ran all through using the scientific abstracts, which were available only from 900, the beginning of 900 up to the moment.
Right.
I could follow all the papers, and I followed all the papers which were speaking of different models of the atom. I collected them, I read, and so I could collect all the story.
From 1986 to 1988.
No, from 19. Unfortunately,
From what year to what year with all the studies?
beginning of last century,
Yes.
1900.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because in my library, unfortunately, they have only the scientific answer starting from the 19th century.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I say because the scientific answers of the previous century were not available for me. So
Right.
I had to look for them by chance.
Okay. No, but when were you doing this bibliography? That's what I meant. When were you doing this examination? You were collecting this information, 1986.
From 1982 to 1988.
Right.
So in 1988, I was ready to write a paper on the story of the atomic molecules.
And did you wrote something there? Right. Prior to Pons and Fleischmann, way before.
They were still away.
I know.
Then in 1997, I came also in touch with a strange physicist, chemist physicist in Bologna, who wanted to send me a paper on the cryogenic model of nuclear fusion. And this paper was interesting for me because it showed the possibility, with a model which to my eyes looks convincing, that, for example, I knew the story by previous legend, that very probably our sun, the inside core of the sun, is a solid, is not a gas.
What's it made out of?
Probably is a metallic hydrogen. So
Did you learn this from Boscoli?
From Bosco, yes. So
You know Boscoli still?
Oh yes, I went to him. We wrote a paper together, and so at the time, following the ideas, Bosco idea, I started to ask funds for research to the CNR, to which I gave. Asking to fund my research on what we call cryogenic model of nuclear fusion, which later became called fusion. But I was asking, my first request for funds to the CNR are of 1997, and I was asking especially for funds in the field of cryogenic model of nuclear fusion. Obviously, they denied me this crazy idea.
Right, crazy.
I went.
By the way, you were doing this yourself, not with Bosco.
No, with Bosco. Since Bosco gave me the idea, I was making the research by myself.
Right.
Then, when I had already nearly completed the story of the atom. I met also Bosco, so I collected further information. Not only, but another good thing was that Bosco at the time, for some strange reason, which is not the case now, he had a complete series of books on alchemy. And so, I'm curious, I started reading all the books on alchemy, with all the information. At the time, I was nearly convinced by Kevran books that the idea looks good, in biological fermentation and also in geological fermentation. But I was very skeptic on alchemy.
You thought it could occur in nature, but
because
maybe...
I was still a classic physicist in this sense. But then reading these books, I came into the idea that very probably the alchemists were right. Because many of them,
What was it about the books that made you convinced they were right?
two books mainly. One book from a Frenchman, I don't remember now the name, but I shall quote the book. I've quoted. Then I have located to read three main alchemists: Nicolas Flamel, a well-known alchemist of the 13th century. Then another, I could read the books of Basil Valentine, and especially it was very good for me to read the book, the open-ended to the close parts of the king, of the Neophylalethes. It was an English alchemist, the one who inspired very much the work of Newton. Newton, when he died, he was found in his library a book of the Neophylalethes undersigned with all the details of the proceedings and so on. He was, because the Neophylalethes, according to the chemical tradition, was one of the best alchemists of the
Who was?
Irenaeus Philalethes is a nickname because I have listened many stories about Irenaeus Philalethes. sometime he went also to the United States. Somebody told me that for a certain time he was also the governor of the state of Massachusetts. Then he came back again to Europe. Then in 645 he gave to the print this book, The Open Entrance to the Closed Palace of the King. It became a very successful book because, and now I can understand why, because it's the most detailed book about how to make.
It was the most detailed. Did it really just say how to do it?
It's the best. Was the best known book on alchemy because it's the most complete telling of the story. Some details are covered, but most of the important steps and stages and characterization of what is needed are shown there. This book, I think, even now that is one of the best.
Did you say that? Do you think that Isaac Newton made gold? Do you think he did?
Probably he was aware of a very simple way to make gold, because at the time when he was nominated director of the English Mint, the gold reserve of England raised from 1 to 8 times. So probably he was not making the alchemic, the philosopher's stone, but he was able to make the normal reaction that we have made also in Texas. Which can cause you can multiply the gold for 8-10 times. This is easy.
Do you think he was doing it that way?
Probably, because all of a sudden, while he was the director of the English Mint, the gold reserve of England raised, let's say, from 1 as a step to 8.
In how many years?
In a few years. And all during this time, and not only, but Newton stated English laws against the making of gold. Against the gold makers.
He made the
against. He didn't want that nobody could make the gold.
He instigated those laws.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. He established laws against the gold makers.
Was the cover for the story, by the way, for that?
No, because I think.
Was it so that because it was fraud? Okay. In other words, the public reason for not making gold, according to the laws, was.
But the fraud against the government, because the government had the monopoly of gold at that time. Gold could not be every mint as is 10 of silver and of gold.
Right.
So everybody in the field could know from which kind of mint the gold and the silver coins came. Just make an essay, because the content of silver and gold of the coins were really known.
Right.
So nobody could falsify, for example, the mixer.
Right.
Or better. They could make better gold, but in this case it was the worst way to make money. At that time, gold was money. If you had a piece of gold, you print it.
I know.
Falsification was very easy. Not only, but probably Newton was aware that somebody was able, because he knew very well the writings of Ireneo Filaret, and he knew that it was possible to make gold. So he.
Can you spell with letters the name of that book, the author?
The author is an English writer who takes the nickname of Ireneo Filaret. Ireneo Filaret.
Spell Filaret.
Is give me a pen.
Here's a. Just write it down. No.
So
go ahead.
He takes the nickname of Ireneo. Is the Latin name Ireneo. I don't know how you pronounce his name, but it's Ireneo.
Ireneo Filaret.
This was the best alchemist of the epoch.
Yeah, I'm just doing it here. There we go. That's it. Okay.
He was the best alchemist of the epoch, and he was well known by Newton because Newton spent all his life studying his book, trying to copy his results. So from the information that he could easily have through all the chemical books, he could finally arrive to the formula which was used by Bocchus in Accession ID, because it was nothing more than a mixture of gunpowders and some other chemicals.
Right.
The one which I gave you.
Right.
You can improve that formula.
Yes.
The formula that I gave is exactly the same that was used by Bocchus in 1992.
So that formula from this Fileti book has been floating around for a long time.
For centuries.
For centuries. That's
As
a
a matter of
generic
fact,
method. Gunpowder and other methods.
Exactly. not only, but you have to remember that gunpowder was discovered by Bertolt Schwarz while he was trying to make gold.
Was it? I mean, the Chinese had gunpowder.
Yes, because also the Chinese knew alchemy. Alchemy was known by the Chinese, by the Egyptians, and by the Sumerians. The Chinese have their own tradition in alchemy.
They have a tradition in alchemy.
Yes, in India also.
Gold making?
Yeah, in India too. Yeah, since Srinivazan saying that in 1932 an alchemist came to
Right, well, we don't know, but okay, it's statement.
but probably true, because at the time still some really. So it was spread all over the more civilized countries, people, civilizations of the epoch, but since 1,000 years. I think that gunpowder was known as a method to extract gold and multiply it from the Egyptians since a few thousand years before Christ. Let's say something like 7,000 years ago. They already knew the gunpowder. Only that it was of great importance to the gold mining. They didn't use it as a gun. So Bertolt Schwarz, while trying to make gold, following the old information about
What century was Bertolt Schwarz in?
it seems to me that it was around 1,300, something similar. I don't know exactly.
What nationality was he?
He was a German,
A German.
like Basilius Valentinus, like Basil Valentine. He was called Bertolt Schwarz. No, probably was his family name. But Schwarz also because he was always black, because he was trying to make
he was dark.
alchemist.
Right.
Alchemic. Practically, he was making the wrong mixture in this ignition, and instead of having a controlled ignition, as was made, for example, in Italian, he made an explosive ignition. So the cover of his crucible exploded and went to make a hole on the ceiling. And after him, they started to suppose that gunpowder could have a much better importance. Not only, but gunpowder was already used by the Moguls. They made the first guns. This
The Mongols?
is the Mongols, yes, Genghis Khan. So they were powerful also because they were the first to use the cannons in the war, and they surprised the Europeans. Then after that, all the information came also in Europe, and also the Europeans started to use the gunpowder. But the gunpowder came to the complete knowledge of Europeans through the Moguls, the Mongols.
Mongols.
And because they, for the first time, they were hit by these
Projectiles.
projectiles sent to the gunpowder. So it's a long story.
Right.
And in Europe became obvious when Bertolt Schwarz, according to the tradition, it's well-established tradition, that he, making some errors while he was trying to make gold, he found the gunpowder. This is the tradition that is told to us. When I was a young boy, I learned, for example, that gunpowder was discovered by Bertolt Schwarz, but without saying why he discovered, and without saying that it was already known since much before from the Egyptians. When you are at school, they don't say you this kind of information. I learned them later.
Right. I always had heard the Chinese had discovered it.
Yes, the Chinese. They use for
Firecrackers.
fireworks. But the Moguls use that for guns,
Right.
which is much more interesting, more different. They found a more useful way to use the fireworks.
Right. Right. Sure. Of
Made
course.
the guns. So where we were, because
Okay, well, you were making studies and then we were
yes,
reflecting back. And this was still 1980.
So in 1997, I asked for funds for the called 1997, 2 years before Flight Man Pons.
1987.
Excuse me.
That's on your screen.
1987. I asked the National Research Council for funds to work in the field of the cryogenic model of nuclear fusion.
Right.
I had already made my historical studies on the model of the atom. I had already, I was already writing the book which I presented 1 year later in 1998 in the conference at the University of Camerino, in which I went all through the story of the model of the atom. And I came to the conclusion that, in my opinion, it was possible to make different nuclear reactions at low energy. This was November 1998.
1988.
1988, excuse me. 1 year later, while I was in the mountains, the sky, I came to know that the research that I wanted to start had already been made by Fleischmann and Pons.
Right.
As soon as I came to know to the information in 29 of March, about Fleischmann and Pons,
23rd of March, right.
I went immediately back to Bologna because I applied again to the National Reserve for
Right.
Funds.
You thought this would help.
The Chiosiani model.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it helped because the CNR invited me to a conference between Italian physicists to start the possibility, the reality of multiple experiments. I was totally convinced. Since then, I understood that they were making low energy nuclear reaction, but that they make an error because I never thought that the palladium could work as a catalyst. But on the contrary, through all the information which I had, I could suppose that palladium entered in the reaction. So it was like a match. You can fire it once, but after that, it's no more palladium. So since 1989, I asked Fleischmann. I was invited to the RC conference, and so I made.
Did you go?
Yes.
You were where?
Because an Italian newspaper called The Sole 24 Ore, which is economic journal, gave me the money to go to RC. Because I asked before also to them funds to make the funds for the research.
Right.
So they were aware of the story. They were aware. I had already written at the time my alpha standard model of the atom, and I was trying to find funds.
Right.
So when I saw that somebody was coming out with the same idea, I came out and said, "Hey, I'm here."
By the way, do you think today, with the results of Macubre and so forth, where we see a lot of helium-4, and it appears that it is corresponding to the fusion? Do you think that occurs?
I think that the criticism that I made in 1989 was that you can have there are three main components in the reaction, which I suppose, without knowing what Martin Fleischmann and Pons were doing, I could immediately understand which was the kind of electrolyte that they used. As a matter of fact,
You knew it was lithium something like that.
lithium tetroxide.
Lithium what?
Lithium LiOD, lithium tetroxide, because it was the only thing that he could have used. As a matter of fact, in a moment in which nobody was aware of what kind of electrolyte they
were using,
I went to this. I was invited by many of the Italian newspapers. They make me folders, and I say you can find this element also in the market because I showed the catalog of the Italian industrial chemistry, showing that lithium tetroxide. This is be sure that this is the electrolyte that I've used. But nobody with me.
Right.
So on the contrary, few days later, he came to know that the electrolyte was exactly the lithium tetroxide, which I already knew from previous studies.
Right.
So I tried also to give to contact in Erice, Fleischmann and Pons, and also Jones, because to my knowledge, in my view, they had no information about all this story. They came to about Martin Fleischmann. I could make another hypothesis because, for a strange coincidence, in Salt Lake City, there is also an alchemic society. So one of the hypotheses I made at the time was that they could have been in touch with some of the alchemists of Salt Lake City. Because
you think Fleischmann and Pons could have been?
No, it was just an hypothesis
at the time.
At the time,
they could have been.
Because I knew that in Salt Lake City there was an alchemic group working.
On making gold?
I don't know.
Right.
I know only
How did you know that?
Because I was in touch with the philosopher of science Italian philosopher of science, who was aware of the fact that he was curious about alchemy, and he knew of this group of alchemists in Salt Lake City. So he gave me the information. So when I associated the name Martin Fleischmann with Salt Lake City, I made a connection. Maybe these people had some academic information.
It turned out they probably didn't, but who knows?
Probably not, because I think that still even now, they are not aware of what really are discovered. They only had rediscovered alchemy. This is always humanity. Then I.
But what do you think is the participation of the palladium in the reaction today?
You can make, as you have seen also, this kind of reaction
Yeah.
with also other elements, for the titanium.
Yes, but wait a minute. Potato. But
The
when the helium.
Keep in mind also this. Palladium was already known since at least 1 century in chemists. Boschi was a good chemist. He had all the literature on palladium, and you can find already the information about the fact that palladium could absorb an enormous amount of hydrogen.
Yes.
And in some cases,
You're talking about
it has been observed excessive. I found in an Italian we call encyclopedia, collection of all the chemist studies, the information that in some cases the palladium behaved in a very strange way. But sometimes they could get from palladium an enormous amount of energy which was unexplained.
You found this in
Yes.
books? I'd love to see that.
Boschi knew this. As soon as we came to know about Martin, showed me the book of chemistry in which it's all the information about, because they already knew that palladium has this similarly magic property to absorb an enormous amount of hydrogen. The idea of Friedman was only that probably it could also absorb an enormous amount of deuterium. They tried this and they got the result. Unfortunately, the results can be obtained only once, because since '89 I told them that probably you shall not be able to repeat the test twice, because after the reaction the first layer of the palladium will be no more palladium.
What will it be, by the way?
Yeah. So I suggested since then, please study. I made a written request at the RC conference. Study your electron before and after the reaction. You shall find no more palladium. Unfortunately, this study has been only in 1996 by Mizuno and Bocchis, and they found that in a layer of 1 micron, all the palladium was gone. Palladium purity 99.9% remained only 30%, and a bunch of new elements were made, which was what happened also in Fleischmann experiments. I was surprised because when I asked to Martin Fleischmann in the conference of RC if he has ever found silver in his electrodes, he was surprised
To hear that.
Yeah.
Well,
but,
yeah, they weren't
but he
on the-
didn't answer. So I suppose that probably he knew this, but he was covering something. Covering the fact that, as a matter of fact, he's not able to make a constant. Is what I suppose. It's a method you can use only once. Then you have or to scratch the palladium, or use, this was has been another solution for them, very thin rods of palladium, so that you can substitute it. But anyway, to my mind was completely clear. I made in a written form these two requests, and I said that the experiment was not replicable because you have to change the palladium rods,
Right.
because it was no more palladium.
It's going to decay in some form.
Now is known, but at the time.
Well, all sorts of weird things are happening. So everything now is like,
But at the time, all these people were surprised about the reaction.
right.
They could never imagine the idea of
No, of course,
transmutations
no,
and
of
so
course
on.
not. Right.
On the contrary, I was already in the mood of transmutation.
Yeah, you were, right. You were ahead of them. Right. Now, how then, so you heard about, you went to the Erici conference.
After the RC conference, I came in touch.
That's in Sicily, isn't
In
it?
Sicily, near Trapani. I know very well RC because I was there for many years, following the schools of physics created by an Italian physicist, Di Chigi. So I knew very well the place, knew how to immediately do. Fortunately, this Italian newspaper, very known abroad because it's the economic journal, paid me for the airplane ticket, the expenses, the hotel, and so on. And I went there very quick to listen at the conference.
They wanted your opinion and so forth.
Yes, because they were surprised by the fact that since 1990 I was already asking for for the cryogenic fusion. At the time I called it cryogenic fusion.
Right.
Not only, but when I made after RC, obviously this documentation was already present at the CNR, so I made a press conference saying all the information about Kerran, about the cryogenic model. As a matter of fact,
We mentored Italian newspapers?
Yes, this is what you can find all the time newspaper reporting my
With your name, yeah.
against the classical position of the physicist. Preparata obviously was strongly against me because he had his own theory. I was
Who was strongly against?
Preparata.
Preparata, of course, right.
On the contrary, was having a new model of the atom, new theories.
Everything.
He said, who is this?
Crazy.
He's nobody. He's crazy. Not only, but he was a very strong relativist. So he was against Einstein, against the model of the atom. For him, it was the worst enemy possible. Now he's dead, he's not.
Right.
But at the time, we had a very strong battle because in November '89, we made a conference in Italy between Italian physicists, and I suggested to make all the tests of carbon plus oxygen and all the biological transmutation.
Right.
And because even before I went to Milan, because Emilio Del Giudice was a good friend of a friend of mine.
Milan?
Emilio Del Giudice.
You went to Milano?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
This friend of mine knew Emilio Del Giudice, and Emilio Del Giudice was the best friend of Preparata. So this friend of mine, which worked in Rome, convinced Emilio to introduce me to Preparata. So I went to Milan, suggesting to Preparata that we had at least 2 or 3 tests very easy to be made, which could show clearly, without any doubt, the transmutations, not the Fleischmann effect, because in my opinion, was wrong. Because I always stated firmly that palladium doesn't enter as a catalyst, but enters in the reaction with the LiOD and with the deuterium.
What is the reaction? Helium-4 comes out somehow.
Yes.
An alpha particle.
Yes. You have also some reaction B
Some
plus D.
fusion. Yeah.
Yes.
Some.
But you have also the interaction with lithium is a very reactive element because it has a terminal T1. According to my table,
it has a what?
A terminal tritium.
The terminal tritium.
Lithium is alpha plus tritium. Like potassium is also something plus tritium. All the elements which I showed in my table, which ends with a tritium attachment, are nuclear, from a nuclear point of view, very active.
Right.
As a matter of fact, this is why I decided immediately that the possible electrolyte that the Fleischmann used should be the most easy to use, the lithium tetroxide. Because I knew that lithium, potassium, sodium, potassium, and other are very good for nuclear reaction. So I suppose that they would have certainly started from the lithium. It's the most easy.
Tell me, let me ask you a question. It may have some immediate importance. Do you think if you had an electric arc, underwater, in which lithium, let's say you have a lithium, let us say you have a lithium hydroxide solution, and you create an electric arc someplace. So in this solution you have lithium 6, lithium 7, you have deuterium from water, normal, oxygen, and so on. Do you think nuclear reactions would occur in that?
Oh, certainly.
What would the primary reaction be?
I don't know, because you have to make, because I don't know, I cannot know exactly the kind of reaction that will come, but I already read many times the electric arc experiment of Ozawa.
Carbon.
Right. And I could see that immediately that the result was positive. Not only, but I have to say, in a certain sense, at that time I was asking for myself. So when I went also to INE, to Srinivazan, I made a lecture in which I was saying the best way to have low energy nuclear reaction. But the best solution I had for myself. So I told them to make in water,
Right.
which is you have a good result, but not the best one. The best way is to make it in the gas, not in the water, because very soon the water becomes hot and the content of gases in the water evaporates, and so the reaction product goes lower and lower. But if you work directly with oxygen or nitrogen, you have an enormous amount of production of iron or thorium.
So you think that you think that a welding arc, if you have carbon rods in air, or in pure
Because
oxygen.
I had original information about this from Kevran. Kevran observed that the French workers, which worked in the welding business,
Yes.
They died for carbon monoxide contamination.
Right.
But there were no observable carbon monoxide in the place where they were working. So he supposed that the electric arc could cause, this is well described in the Kevran books, a transmutation between two nitrogen, the nitrogen in the air, which can, one atom of nitrogen can become oxygen and the other becomes carbon. So they were making, while welding, the carbon monoxide, which was the carbon, or better, the reaction could also happen through the skin. So that at the end they were contaminated by carbon monoxide, which was not formed there, but was formed through the pass of their, in their skin of the activated nitrogen. So he decided from it was a Kevran's result that from that time on, all the people working on welding are obliged to have a flux of air to get rid of the activated nitrogen that they create while welding.
Welding, I say. Okay.
And this is a common now is a common safety
issue,
which is followed since Kevran stayed.
But they don't. But they don't understand what they're doing.
No, Kevran arrived to this conclusion. So he was in the position to take this decision. He decided by law that all the welders have to have an air pump to get rid of the activated nitrogen.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So
Amazing. So this is getting back. So I had gotten off by asking about lithium hydroxide because I'm kind of interested in that. Okay, that may be a productive way.
Maybe. I never tried. I know that there are 1,000 possible reactions.
Many for the energy. You're focusing mainly, I know now, on
at the time, I decided I had to decide for certain field. So I decided that especially after the Bockris experiment, the Bockris adventure, let's say, that it was dangerous to make gold, but it could be a better idea to destroy radioactive waste.
Better to do.
Idea to destroy the radioactive waste.
To destroy radioactive waste.
So I addressed my research since there in the direction of destroying, because I thought if you can, as I had already seen in Bockris' time, you can break a stable nuclei, should be much more easier to destroy an unstable nuclei.
Right.
So I started, since '92 I started working on the idea of the radioactive waste
disposal.
To dispose.
Right.
I decided that was the most safe thing because at the time I had also all the bad experiments still under. I saw that gold was dangerous.
Right.
So I decided.
Let us how did so we understand now, which I did not understand before, all your previous background as to why you would get interested in this all. Because by the way, the perception from
another thing. Because after 1989, after the Harris's conference, I tried to get in touch with some of the physicists and chemists which were more interested. So I chose two people. One was Ikegami of the director of the Bamba Atomic, the head of Srinivazan.
Yenga, right.
The head of Srinivazan, and the second was Bockris. Bockris, I started writing him and sending many of my papers.
Self-extended model and so forth.
So since '89 I was in touch by letter with Bockris, and I was in touch also with Iyengar. Then I decided to that because of his old tradition, which I already knew, India could be the most easy way to start, easy point to start. So I went to the Baba Atomic Center proposing some tests. And fortunately, I found Iyengar introduced me to Srinivasan. Fortunately, Srinivasan was the son of a man who was the follower of Elena Blavatsky, a strange woman.
He was the son of someone who believed in Blavatsky, the theosophical.
And by chance, in 1800 last century, Blavatsky, with another English man, made a book called Occult Chemistry.
I know, I have the book. Right.
In which they speak of a rigid model of the atom.
They speak of
a rigid model of the atom.
Rigid model.
Which corresponds exactly to what I already made. So
by the way, let us take just a little digression here. What is your model of the atom?
Is what I explained in the first paper presented in 1991 to the conference of Como, Italy.
Yes.
It was completely explained in a big paper. I wrote
Yes,
a big paper.
for Journal of New Energy.
Yeah. But nobody paid attention
Yeah,
to it.
but okay, now, but wait.
Yeah.
Is there a tiny nucleus in the atom or no tiny nucleus?
No, the nucleus is much bigger than they suppose, because they are studying nuclei in the wrong way. Rutherford made a stupid idea.
Yeah. Why did the alpha particles that were being shot at the gold foil, why did they bounce back?
Because from the model already studied by Harkins and Lewis, I could suppose that the nuclei were composed mainly of alpha particles and of other particles which I call T1, T2, and T0. And also of a new particle which I could imagine, which is the one which I call the alpha node, which is made of 4 neutrons, the polyneutrons that are
4 neutrons. Okay, alpha node is 4 neutrons.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a little neutron drop.
So the polyneutrons theory is very old, but they didn't know, or they don't know that it was already made in 1922 by Harkins and others. Harkins used exactly the same
the polyneutron idea.
The polyneutron idea.
Right.
He supposed that he didn't arrive up to the complete alpha standard model, but it was very near. Unfortunately, after that he was dissuaded to go on. But I think in a few steps, if you could have been some luck, he could have arrived to the alpha.
Let me ask you something about particles, because I recently come onto some other theories which you may know about. Okay, one by Kraft and another by there's a gentleman, Gulko.
Oh, they're close. I was a little thirsty.
Oh, you were thirsty. Oh well, maybe we can.
Tap.
You want to stop? Let me just ask this quick question,
Yeah.
and then you go find a beverage and just come back.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you heard of the idea that there could be a perfect fluid model of particles in which the particles are not little hard things of any sort, and they certainly don't have quarks necessarily, but they have spinning vortices?
No, I don't know about
You don't know about that theory. Okay. Well, we'll forget that for now.
No, because
I'm just curious.
for all my theories, only necessary what already is known: protons, neutrons, electrons.
Right.
And
Do you believe in quarks? Do you believe they may exist?
Maybe. I never worked in the metal particles. I know that in metal particles made an enormous amount of mistakes and errors, and also falsifications. I know, for example, I never believed of their theory about the super heavy particles because first, but this is another question. I can't suppose that a particle which has a life of 10 to the minus 12 seconds can be of any importance.
Right.
On the contrary, protons, neutrons, and electrons, they stand.
That's it. Why don't you get yourself a drink and come back? I'll be right here. And we'll stop temporarily. Good.
So my first trip in India was fruitful because, fortunately, the man which I met, which is Srinivasan, which Yengai introduced me to Srinivasan, was the son of the member of the Theosophical Society. Moreover, fortunately, his father told him that the atom was he was a follower of Blavatsky, and not only, but at the same time they gave me another information which I already had. That because the same friend who told me about the Alchemy Society in Salt Lake City told me that there was a faculty of alchemy in India. I turned my
This Italian person that you knew
told me that he made many trips to India, and he knew that
he was interested in alchemy,
but only from a philosophical point of view. He was not
just
scientist.
philosophical. Yeah.
He told me that to his knowledge, there was in India, in the Banaras Hindu University, a faculty of alchemy. I was very interested. So, by chance, I asked the Srinivasan more information, and he addressed me to Dixit, who was the chief alchemist of this faculty. In Banaras, there is still existing.
Benares, India.
Banaras.
In India.
In India.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there is still existing in India a faculty of alchemy.
Really?
It's called Raja Shastra Department. It means study of the seed.
Study of the seed.
In the case of the seed of metals and so on. But as a matter of fact,
do they do alchemy?
They do alchemy. As a matter of fact,
And Srinivasan knew about this.
yes, you know, as an information. He gave no importance to it because nobody paid attention to these people.
Right.
they are working according to Hindu tradition which lasts thousands of years. Not only, but I told him also about the Ashoka column in India, that I was curious. And when I decided to make my visit in India, I had many fixed point I wanted to see. As occasion, Srinivasan and Iyengar, because I was in connection with the Iyengar. It was one of the names which I selected to be interesting, so I started a correspondence. Then I wanted to go to Delhi because I already knew, since some old books of Peter Colosimo, about the existence of the iron pillar in Delhi,
Yeah.
which was made by the Emperor Ashoka, which, to my knowledge, which has strange property. It has the same property that seems to have the iron made by Ojjawa. It doesn't rust. It's 1,000 years in that place, but it never rusts.
Who wrote the book about that? You say that.
The first information about the Ashoka column I came when I was a young student to it from Peter Colosimo.
Peter who?
Colosimo.
Colosimo.
It's some kind of scientific. He was the starter of, I can say, fantascientific archaeology. Peter Colosimo. Peter Colosimo spoke about the iron pillar in Delhi.
I've heard about that iron pillar, yeah. And it doesn't corrode.
No, by saying this iron pillar showed, I know this is free from Colosimo, has the same property that Ojjawa said had his iron. It doesn't rust. So I was very curious to see this iron pillar, and I went there to visit. So I wanted to go to Bombay, to Delhi, and then to Banaras. Banaras because I knew about the existence of this faculty of alchemy. And fortunately, Srinivasan was able to address me to an exact place because it was not listed as a faculty of alchemy, but Raja Shastra department. And then I passed also through another town in India, in which addressed me against Srinivasan, saying that there was a strange man who was able to make EV water from normal water by an electrolytic process. This man, for many years, was addressing to the Baba Atomic Research Center, saying that he was able to make in big amounts deuterium through normal water, making electrolysis in normal water. So Srinivasan speaking to me, well, if you want this strange man, which nobody went to listen.
Right.
And so I passed also in Jaipur. I saw him. He gave me the. As a matter of fact, this his apparatus, which I made a photograph of, I repeated in Italy, and it was interesting because I came out.
Did it make heavy water?
What?
Did it make heavy water?
He makes a strange composition, which at the time I had not had the possibility to analyze. But certainly, that stuff makes that reactor makes strange things. But I couldn't have the possibility to analyze it.
But you know you have it still.
Oh yes, I still.
But now why don't you analyze?
Because I can make much better of that now. Because this was 1991. Then I went to the conference in Como, and there finally, because I was already in touch since 1989 with Bokis, we exchanged the marionettes for 2 years, and finally I could meet Bokis. So I came to Como, and I could finally meet Bokis. We had a long conversation. I told him about my recent trip to India and everything, and it was interesting.
So you got him interested in this whole.
Yes, he was interested. He was an intelligent man. Bokis is intelligent. He's not too courageous because if he could have been more courage, you could have made much more things. But he had some problem. For example, also in the repetition of the. Let's go for a moment. Srinivasan accepted to repeat the experiment on carbon plus oxygen. He thought that it could be interesting and decided to charge a few researchers in the Baba Atomic Research Center to make the reaction carbon plus oxygen in water. Because I knew that the result would have been positive, but I get for myself the better information. Obviously, I'm giving you for free the good information, but the best part I get for myself. So they made it in water, without saying anything. So 1 year later, while I was interested in them, I was explaining also to Champion, to Boris, all the story, new model, the test. And with Lynn, the chief scientist of Boris, Lynn made an horrible moment of, he was very angry because again, when I thought, I told them about the making, the possibility to make iron with carbon products, they said, no, theoretically impossible.
Yeah,
Wait,
right.
again, I said, don't, because I had already repeated that test, so what do you want, I made this, you want to do it. Fortunately, Bob in this occasion didn't follow my suggestion and decided not to make the test. Fortunately,
You did it later, though.
yeah, because
After
at
the
that
goal.
time there was an Indian, Sundaresan, which was a friend of Srinivasan,
Right.
who was in touch with Srinivasan and was informed that the experiment with carbon monoxide came out positive. At that point, Bob,
In India, right.
in India.
Yeah.
At that point, Bob decided to repeat.
Right.
And he
Sure.
made the paper with Sundaresan.
Right.
So this was the second repetition.
Right.
Not only, but the report which, because by chance, Srinivasan came, he visited also me in TSM in '92. I've already known him in the 1 year before. And he told me also the details. He gave me the first version of the report, still not published, asking me not to say anything, but this was the result. And I could see that all the elements divided were following exactly the alpha standard model of the atom. You can find first silicon, then iron, and then all the other elements, not only.
Under which experiment was that?
The experiment that Srinivasan
Did.
ordered, he didn't
In
make
Eng-
it by himself, in India,
Yeah.
came out not only with the production of iron,
Yeah, but silicon.
but silicon, aluminum, chromium, at least 5 well-detected elements in enormous abundance. In a carbon rod which had 2 parts per million of possible iron impurity, they came out with 2,000 parts per million of iron to 100,000 parts per million of aluminum. An enormous amount of new stuff. No way. So when I saw the results, I understood an information which I had already, because in Kushi and Ozawa, in their report, say that they can make 32 elements in this form through that experiment. It's true, because at least 6 were made by the Indian, because they made the experiment in water, which is not the right way, and they saw the experiment after a few hours. On the contrary, if you go on, this was, I gave this hint to Champion later, and in years later he repeated the test following some instructions which I gave him at the time, and he found very good results, which are listed in that paper of '96 in College Station. Because through that method you can make many new elements. In particular case, making this kind of reaction with over a copper base, you can find aluminum, you can find gold, platinum, and other.
What's with the copper base?
Yeah, because in this case, the carbon plus oxygen plus the copper makes gold.
Does it?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, underwater?
No, in the
In air.
Yeah.
So, a carbon arc.
But in minimum amount.
Yeah. A carbon arc to copper will create.
If you change
gold.
the metallic base, this is well written in the paper of '96,
Yeah.
which I did at the College Station.
Right.
Champion, following the idea which I gave him, made 3 different reactions with the base of copper, with the base of of iron probably, and with 3 bases, and you get an enormous amount of numbers, not amount because the amount was small, enormous number of new elements, because it's very easy to make new elements.
Right. Right.
Okay, and this was okay. I retire. And so when Sundaresan gave to Boris the information that Srinivasan had the positive result, then Boris decided himself to make the test finally. But he knew month before, because I also to Boris I told the story of Ozawa, Kevran. So it was interesting. Another thing obviously. Boris knew this information since 2 years, since '89. But it was only in '92 that he came in front of a strange occasion. A strange businessman named Bill Tillander offered him some money to make some unusual tests with all other universities.
The first contact, according to Bacchus, this is what happened.
Yeah.
the very first contact with any of that was Joe Champion called him up one day. Joe Champion initiated a call
Yeah.
to Bacchus.
Exactly.
That's how it started.
Exactly.
And then
And it was really 92. Bacchus at the time was already informed about these toys or these possibilities, some chemical hints which I gave him. And so he decided, also because Tillander offered immediately to him a fund of $200,000 to make the test.
The gifts, right.
He decided, well, if they give me money, why not? But he said, I want an Italian physicist to follow the test.
To follow the test?
Because he's, in my opinion, he's a man who knows better about alchemy and this possible reaction.
Right, sure.
He sent me a letter asking if it was possible to make gold. At the time, it was very difficult for me to admit that this is a strange possibility. So I said, as regards your question number 5, because he asked me 10 questions,
Right.
my answer is yes.
Yes. Right.
Because in case he couldn't say, look, this man, he's saying that he can make gold. So I said, the answer is yes. And a little later he called me in Texas A&M. That's why I arrived in A&M in this strange situation where
you just arrived and Champion was there already.
Yes, not only, but I had the luck to arrive in the right season. Because I arrived at the beginning of April.
April.
Because previously...
Did you know about this already?
What?
Did you know about the seasonal effect already?
Oh yes, obviously. This is the first thing that you learn when you study a book on alchemy.
Is it true?
Everywhere it's written.
Everywhere. The seasonal
in every
effect.
book on alchemy, the seasonal effect is a well-established condition.
Right. Now, so you arrived at the right time.
Yeah. Not only, but because the champion was already there, but he started his first test in the wrong season, so he had no good results.
By the way, he did initial tests having nothing to do with fire, gunpowder things. He started with.
No.
He claimed, first of all.
When he came to Bacchus,
he had a lot of equipment.
He already knew the story of the gunpowder. He didn't know that the main component was gunpowder.
Wait a second. Yeah, but wait. Before though, you see, he got in. According to the Bacchus story, he called up and said, I can do more efficient cold fusion, okay, and I might be able to create other elements and so forth.
Exactly.
But then.
Because the story of Champion starts also this in 1989, because at the time he was, at what he said, it was able to repeat something similar to Fleischmann's experiment after the experiment came out.
Right.
He was able to repeat it and having good kind of success. Of his studies, Champion studies, came to know a man called Jack Keller. So Jack Keller went to visit, also him alarmed by this extraordinary story of the cold fusion, went to visit Joe Champion.
Keller visited
Joe
Champion.
And
Joe Champion had known Keller already somehow.
He knew Keller only after 1989.
Okay, yeah.
At that time, Keller told him a strange story about possibility to make strange nuclear reactions, to increase the amount of gold available in the ores. And Joe Champion had the intelligence to be interested, and he went later from his place. I don't remember where he was working. I think in Texas. Went to visit Keller. Keller showed him the ignition. And
the fire assay.
The fire assay came later. It's a normal way to take out the noise. Not only, but Keller told only what he was able to. That sometimes he had good results because Keller was not aware of alchemy. He has no knowledge of physics and chemistry. He was just in his own. He had the occasion to have as a guest in his house Walter Lucic, Lucic is the name clearly of slave origin, but it was American born. It was born. I know also the place where Lucic was born is near
Lucic.
Lucic. Yes, it's written Lucic.
Yeah.
Which is clearly name of Europe. But this was born in the state of Washington. And he was for a few months a guest of Jack Keller house because he used to rent rooms to people who has not their house.
Right.
And so Jack Keller had observed the things, the strange things which Lucis was making. And so he came to know, and this starts another story, because he came to know what Lucis and the group of workers were making, what Troy Becker was making, and so on.
Troy Becker knew Lucic. They all.
Troy Becker and Lucic. Lucic was a chemist, a good geologist and chemist. Then another, Professor Robinson, was another of the association of Lucic. Then another woman who died of cancer a year later. I don't remember now his name, but we can find easily all the information because Nancy Mitchum has all the letters.
Nancy Mitchum was the attorney.
Was at the same time the attorney and the girlfriend of Tillander.
Tillander.
This is another complete story.
About how old was she at the time?
Oh, young in the sense that now he has 10 years older. I think that he's much younger than me, at least 10 years younger than me. Mm-hmm. So she should be now 45. Mm-hmm. She fell in love with Tillander, mm-hmm. And so because she was a good lawyer, she helped Tillander as a lawyer. Tillander employed her as a lawyer. Mm-hmm. Okay, as a lawyer for him, for mm-hmm. Tillander, because Nancy Mitchum had already worked in the office of the man without arm, which ran for the presidency of the United States. How is it?
Perot? Perot?
No,
in Texas?
No, in Kansas.
The man which was Dole.
Dole.
Nancy Mitchum was in was in Dole's office?
Yes.
As what kind of a person?
I think that he was following the political career of Dole as he was in the staff for Dole's promotion to governor and election.
Oh, she was on the presidential campaign staff.
So for Tillander it was interesting because she was in touch with many people, especially with Dole very well. Right. So they could introduce to the United States of the Senate. Yeah. He had a good relation to go to the United States government through Dole, mm-hmm. because he was a friend of Dole. Mm-hmm. And Tillander came to know her. They became also love. Tillander didn't behave correctly with Nancy because
what's this?
Tillander didn't behave correctly with Nancy because in the same time in which he was fiancé with Nancy, he has another woman in California. Uh-huh. So Nancy came to know too late that this man was
double dealing.
Yeah, it's very complicated. The connection, the women connection by the story.
What did you think of Tillander overall as a person? What kind of a person was he?
Well, he was a strange man. He was first not educated. He was
not educated.
Yeah. He came from a good family, but not money. But he make money with the restaurant business. Then
you're convinced he had a restaurant business?
No, I've seen.
You've seen the restaurants?
Oh, yes.
Did you meet other family members?
Yes. His grandmother was some kind connected with the General MacArthur. Was the cousin of General MacArthur. So,
really?
Yes, I saw that because I went to Tillander's grandmother house, Tillander house, because he has a house in San Diego in which he keeps, San Diego, in which he keeps his grandmother and some other relatives, mm-hmm. And so I know all the relatives. So he was very proud to say that his grandmother was related to MacArthur.
Related to Douglas MacArthur.
Douglas MacArthur, he was proud of his origin thing.
Was her name Tillander too?
Yes, it is William Tillander.
But was the grandmother's name or last name Tillander?
I don't remember. But he was a relative of MacArthur.
Okay.
So Tillander was very proud of his.
He was proud of it.
Yeah.
How old was Tillander when you first met him?
Tillander had 2 years more than me, so now he should be 57.
Okay, so he was a little older than you.
Yeah, a little older.
You were born in what year? You were born in
45.
45.
I'm now 55.
Right.
So
he was born. He was a little older. He was born in 43.
43.
Right. And how old do you think Champion was?
Champion is 1 or 2 years older than me.
Ah, so about the same age as Tillander.
And
Champion is very tall.
Yes.
and heavy,
it's
a
all
football
big
player.
man. No, I don't know if he told me many times that he went to the war in Vietnam
Yeah.
because both Tilander and Champion drank very much, incredible. They could
would
drink
drink.
an incredible amount
Of liquor.
Champion drank mainly two things: Budweiser and tequila, what they call the margarita. They could drink in 1 minute 10 margaritas, 5 bottles of beer. Usually, at the end of any evening, at 6 o'clock when we came out from Bocchi's laboratory, we met in the University Tower, the tower which I call the station, and they started drinking. And they drink from 6 o'clock to about 11 o'clock. So at the end of the evening, they were completely drunk. And so when drunk, they told me all these incredible stories. And so little by little, I came to know, because at the time I have not much confidence with English, so I liked better to listen. As a matter of fact, Tilan told me that always told me that I was like a wolf in the bush, because I always keep attention, and while I registered everything while they were drunk.
You were listening while they were drunk.
I was listening.
Right.
I like better to listen instead of speaking. Little by little, I started also to tell Champion something about alchemy. As a matter of fact, a few days later, I arrived in Texas. I was already writing for Champion the report that he presented to Bocchis as his own.
You wrote a report?
I wrote the first report about alchemy because 1 week later, as soon as I arrived in Texas, Champion understood, because he's not Champion. He's a liar, but he's not stupid.
He's somewhat
he's smart. He's smart.
He lies, but he's smart.
Exactly. He understood that I had
Pathological liar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he understood that I had more information than him,
Yeah.
and he started using me.
He was using your information.
Yeah. Not only.
Did that annoy you that he was using your information? Were you?
Obviously, but I agreed because they were paying me.
Yeah.
Because immediately, 1 week later, Tilander offered me the possibility to be paid on a regular basis for this research.
From Thielander.
So apparently, I was
Separate money coming to you.
1 week later, I was a dependent of Tilander.
Right.
He assumed me.
Yeah.
I was his employee, not like Chairman, because Chairman was an associate. They made a connection in which they should have divided 50% of the.
You only had come. Bacchus had asked you to come because you had been in earlier communication since 1989.
And he was confident.
And you just landed there at the same time the Champion arrived? Or
No. Chairman was already there.
Yeah, and doing things.
I arrived in the first days of April.
First days of April, okay.
I was
1992.
1989. 1992, excuse me.
Right.
1992.
Right.
And 1 week, 2 weeks later, I was already an employee of Tilander because Champion probably told Tilander that it was.
This is a smart guy. You better make sure he stays here because he has the information.
Exactly.
Right.
So they decided to assume.
Were you leveling what you were telling? You began to tell Tilander about alchemy.
To tell the Champion.
The Champion, right?
I had long conversation with the Champion while he was sober.
But he had separately earlier gotten in touch with Keller.
Yes, but he had no idea that
whether it was real.
That the formula was a old one.
Yeah, but did he believe that it was real?
Yes, because he made the test and he found as a first result reactivity. He
did found it himself outside of Texas A&M.
Yes, when he went
before
to
Texas
Jack
A&M.
Kelly, he went to Jack Kelly place. He made the reaction, and by chance he had a small Geiger count, and he saw the teeth coming out from the reaction. So, this is a nuclear reaction. So he became immediately interested. Mm-hmm. Then through there's Merrill Lynch, I think is the banking group who addressed Tilander to Champion and the Champion, because Champion was asking already for funds. In some way, I don't remember exactly, but this information.
How he got in contact with Tilander?
To the Merrill Lynch.
Right. There was a Merrill Lynch banker or something.
Exactly. Tilander was working already in the field of the exchange of money.
Finance.
And he was looking for opportunities, for business opportunities, and they suggested him to follow. Possibly, this strange man could have some. Then, in this way, through the Merrill Lynch, I think the name of the bank was this. He came in touch with Joe Champion, and they associated. After this, but at the time when champion met Tilander, he had already been visited Jack Harris' place. He had already seen the tests,
Right.
and he knew that there was something real. Not only, but he told me that probably this is true because we saw also some results of it. He went also to Mexico when he was not yet connected with Tilander to make some tests in a region of silver mines to make tests with the ore, and he could get good results. We have seen the results.
Is that with that professor there, Garcia?
Probably.
No.
He was in touch. The university seems to be Guadalajara.
Guadalajara.
Probably.
Guadalajara.
Anyway, he spent around about. He told me about at least few months
In Mexico.
in Mexico, making this test. He was already. He had already knowledge of Mexico because in previous year he get in jail for the Mexico trip went badly. Because I was saying that while he was drunk, he told us to his war adventures that he was an operator of the machine guns in U.S. helicopter, and he was. And Tilander was saying, when did you make the first killing? He gave that.
Yeah.
But the first killing is just to let, but after that is normal.
Nothing.
You
Kill
can
anybody,
kill
yeah.
all the people. You pay no more attention.
Right.
I used to kill them. But they were drunk. But anyway, it probably was so because the Americans used to.
Yes, of course.
So he told us his war adventures. Then little by little, because I was always racing, I started to understand better the situation of champion and also his story. Because also I became very good friendship with Nancy Mitchell, which is a fine girl. He's a good guy. I was sorry that young guys had such a bad behavior with her, because she's a good girl, a nice girl. We remained friends. I went to visit Nancy Mitchell even when I was already working with the Bowers.
Where is she now?
When in 1995, my son went to visit her daughter because they knew in California in 92.
Okay. She's not married.
She was divorced. She was free. She hoped to marry Tilander, but unfortunately Tilander was already married.
He was married. Oh, that was the other woman. Yeah. Right.
No, the wife is another thing.
Oh, he had a girlfriend and a wife.
One more, because Tilander's, how is it?
Mistress?
No, the wife. Tilander's wife asked the divorce. Tilander, as a matter of fact, in some sense, was still in love with his ex-wife. I think that he has also one or two daughters with this guy. But the woman brought it out of the house. So, for example, at the time he had also taken as a lover, a Mexican girl who he found in a striptease place.
Yeah. In Mexico.
Yeah, she take it out of this place. He assumed her as his secretary.
Yeah.
But he was also, at the time, Tilander had three women. The man, Nancy.
His wife?
His wife? No, the wife no. The woman in California,
Yeah.
for whom he bought the house, and the secretary. How is the name?
The mistress. The Mexican mistress.
But the Mexican had to be a secret.
Secret.
He went to visit her, but not only. But while he was in Texas, he liked to. As a matter of fact, it's not a bad thing. Yeah, he had some adventures also with the young students of the university.
He had a what?
When you used to go to a restaurant, with now a nice, how you call it? A young girl who works in the
Waitress?
restaurant. Waitress.
Yes.
And so they tried to around there. So one evening she organized just for her and for her friend a trip to. We went from College Station to Austin with his private airplane. No, Austin. No. A town with a small river, a nice river inside.
Santa Fe? No, I don't know.
In Texas, near in Texas.
Well, Austin.
Austin.
Austin, yeah.
This nice walk with the
Yep.
Austin. We went to Austin to have a dinner together. Dinner. I also had some kind of adventure with the student.
With a student.
Very nice girl, blonde girl, beautiful, Swedish origin. So I had my girlfriend in Texas. She had her own waitress, and to accompany the waitress, she asked me to come with the guy which I know in Texas. And so we went with the plane to
Austin.
To Austin. As a matter of fact, Ilan was at the time was also he was also because when I arrived in the Texas University Towers, he had the suite, and I divided the suite that he had in two parts, one for me and one for him. And so I know that he has brought to bed the accident, which was very sorry because Tilander has made love with her all a few nights, and then he left for other trips.
Right.
And this poor girl, every time I was going to this restaurant to ask to eat, how is Bill?
Right.
Oh, somewhere.
How's Bill? Yeah, God. He wasn't a very good man in that sense.
Yeah. And obviously this only while Nancy was not there. Because when Nancy was around...
Then he was fine.
Well, then was, this was his office.
Did Nancy ever meet the waitress?
No.
No.
And he knew
Or
also,
even know of her?
No. I only knew because...
Well, now, wait a minute. Now, today, Nancy is finished with Tim.
Oh, yes.
Finished. She thinks he's bum.
No, yes, because he knows that Tilander was not God. Because finally he learned that this man had...
all these women. He didn't know that.
No.
She didn't know that.
No.
Nancy didn't know.
The tragedy came in San Diego because in the house of Tilander because this is really a story. Really,
What year?
92. A few months later, we went to San Diego with Tilander.
With his plane, of course. Always with his plane.
Well, private plane.
Always flying that plane.
Unfortunately,
Learjet.
Learjet.
How many passengers?
8, 10, no more than 10 people. As a matter of fact, to go to Washington, he booked a bigger airplane.
Bigger one.
The one for Randy and the lawyers of the Jackson family. Unfortunately, Nancy, which was not supposed to come to San Diego, came to San Diego in a surprise without making notice.
Just arrived.
She found Tilander in the bed with the Mexican girl.
Yeah. Found her in bed. She came to the house.
Yeah. He went upstairs and he found her. And no, nothing. It was a ridiculous thing that the poor girl was afraid because there were storms outside. Story with you. She was crying. Oh,
Who was crying? Mitchell.
Nancy.
Yeah.
Nancy was surprised.
She really loved him.
She really loved it.
Yeah.
Yes, she was in love. She loved Tilander. But
Is he a handsome guy or what?
Tilander, I think he can be considered a nice man. So I saw.
Champion, however, had a sort of a. Champion had
had the previous wife. Then he divided from the wife, has another son, no, a daughter or daughter. Then he came with a blonde woman of the mother of his second son, of Robert, the small.
Right.
Now he has to be already 3 years at the time, so he should be 14.
Right. Okay.
So Champion has his own myth because he told us that he was his wife, but then I learned that they were not married. Also for I don't remember now the moment. I knew him very well there because also that girl had that woman, you heard, not girl, had a bad story because later Champion escaped to Mexico with money of Tilander. He was going to marry a Mexican girl, then was stopped in the rest. The story is very, very
Not
long.
Tilander's Mexican girl. Another
Champion.
Mexican girl.
No, Champion
yes.
went to Mexico.
Yeah.
And he was just in the point of marriage.
He found a Mexican girl.
He has stolen to Tilander. when all the business was going ruined because they were working out of season. He stole all the money because they had a bank account together. He take all the money for the bank account, not much, little, something about $150,000
Yep.
and 200, and then he escaped to Mexico. That's why Tiranda sued him and
Sued him.
And sent the policeman to arrest him in the middle of the conference. And
In what conference? 90s?
because in '89, after all the business with China, with the U.S. government, with the Belize, and with
In 92, you mean?
in '92, excuse me,
Yeah.
in '92, in that period,
Yeah.
all this connection failed. He was still trying to convince people that he could make an enormous amount of gold. So he had organized a conference in Mexico to tell the world that he could make gold. It was in the middle of that conference that the policeman came to arrest him. So it was
This wasn't the conference where Bacchus was at, though. It was a news conference.
a news conference.
Yeah. And
I don't think that Boris was there.
No. There was another time. There was a press conference.
Yes, organized by the champion,
Champion.
by himself. He had already broken with Tiranda, and they had already stolen the money.
Right. And
Tiranda sent to the police because Tiranda knew all the.
Wait a minute. No, wait. There was a certain time when Bacchus went to Mexico.
No, not to Mexico, to Belize. He used to.
No. There was I thought it was Mexico. No. Bacchus went to Mexico with Thielander and Champion at some point to make a press conference of some kind.
Also, Boris was there. I don't remember well.
But that's
probably.
Yeah. But that's where you weren't there.
No.
Yeah. But that's where you heard that Thielander had Champion arrested?
Yes, Tiranda sent the policeman to arrest
Champion.
because the accusation was for having stolen
Stolen money.
the money.
Just stole money.
Yeah. And moreover, he knew that Champion has some problem with the CIA. He was not allowed to go abroad.
Right.
And so he has been arrested.
Right.
They came with 10 policemen. They can take him still a little drunk and brought on the airplane, brought to the jail in Phoenix.
In Phoenix.
This is a incredible story.
Right.
This details again requires much more time.
Yeah, well, let me ask something.
Yeah.
Thielander, where is Thielander today?
Tiranda was arrested and sentenced for 3 years because he never gave back the money to his investors.
Right.
Then he was also charged for fiscal fraud because those people told that he had received from them $7 million. But I think that he was able to give back 2 or 3 millions, so probably he is able to keep about $4 million.
Hid it somewhere.
Somewhere, yes.
Is he out of jail now?
I think he's out of jail because Nancy told me that Tiranda was out of jail. Because later, when he came out of jail, he tried again to contact Nancy, but Nancy didn't want to have anything to do with him.
But Thielander doesn't want to have anything more with any of this.
No, because
He's totally out of the picture.
he has.
Did he have any scientific interests at all, do you think? Or was it all money?
No, because his project was, in fact, this I learned later, was to make an extortion to the Swiss banks. Dangerous, too. Stupid, in my opinion. He knew that under the airport of Zurich, there is a big, enormous amount of gold ingots. The Swiss have
Gold what?
Gold ingots.
Ingots, right. They have a lot of gold. A lot of people have
Exactly.
gold.
So his idea was, I want to show in
The
a scientific
evidence.
way that we are able to make gold, then we
Right.
will go to the Swiss banks saying, if
can
you
do
don't
it.
give us $100 million, that's
Was that he was going to ask?
wanted, we shall give out this formula.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
When did he do that? When did
when I came in April, the plan was already this. This is why he didn't want to go to Belize, because it was under my I suggested that if you are really able to make gold, let's go somewhere to make it.
make
And
it?
so came out the story of Belize. But
What is with Belize? It's a Central American country. and-
Central American country, an ex-English colony, once was named British Guatemala.
Right. But
British Honduras.
He wanted to set up the operation there to make it?
I suggested him to make an operation there.
There.
If you are really, But he never really tried to go up to the end of the question. So I suppose it was something thing because I said, well, if you are really able to do what you want to do, the best thing is to make gold.
Right, right.
So let's
Just
go to
do it.
Belize.
Right.
Let's do it.
Do it quietly.
And so, also Bogdan was in favor of the Belize operation.
Right.
But they, from some reason, didn't
So
want.
he was attracted to that idea a little bit.
A little. But his real idea was an extortion to the Swiss banks. As a matter of fact, it was very.
No. I mean, T-landers.
Tilan.
Yeah.
No, Bogdan was attracted by the idea of Belize.
Yeah.
The
The idea of making it there.
Yes, because Bogdan was in touch with the ambassador of Belize in Houston. We went to visit the British embassy, and it was in that occasion.
You and
I was always present to everything because I was. As a matter of fact, they were always confident in my abilities as an alchemist and as a scientist. So they put me under contract, and they not only me, but as you see, I usually dress blue jeans. For that occasion, they brought me to the big shop.
yeah, and you had the proper things.
I stayed there, and they dressed me with 5 different costumes. I was from the shoes. The shoes we said are still the ones sometimes. Shoes, dresses, everything. They dressed me new. I was they naked me and they sweat me again. It was music for me because they spent an enormous amount of money for. They bought for me 5 complete dresses. Of which I use the one which you see I use is still the one which they bought for me in Texas. The other 4 are still in my bag at home.
Right.
I still them because I never used.
What city in Italy do you live in?
Bologna.
Bologna. Okay, so
They are still in my home in Bologna because I never used. They bought me a dress for the night, the dress for the day. They dressed me already. Even 2 American, how do you call this? The ties. Yeah?
ties.
Yeah. Even American tie, which I still have, but I know I don't use.
Now, T-lander was going to make an extortion plot, and he told everyone about this.
No, he told to nobody.
Who did he told?
Champion told me while he was drunk. He told me what was the real goal.
Yeah. So the 2 of them had this plan.
They were.
Was Champion in favor of the plan?
Yes, obviously. For $100 million, could do anything. One of the evening in which he was drunk, he told me about the real goal of Tilander, because Tilander told to everybody that he had the intention of making a new scientific laboratory open to interesting discovery and so on. So he shown himself.
That's what he was saying. That wasn't the truth.
No, the real. One evening while he was drunk, Champion told me that the real goal was making a solution with the Swiss banks. And then when for certain reason, I don't remember exactly why, the business with the banks, probably the Swiss banks are not so stupid, and they wanted more proofs.
Proof, of course. They thought it was they assumed it was a fraud.
So he tried to go in another direction. He wanted to convince the American government to fund the research, and obviously he wanted to sell the formula to the American government in exchange or something. So he was trying to find a way to get in touch with the American government. As a matter of fact,
so who did
Champion was
an
ex-CIA where I met Nagel. When I was in touch, Champion was in touch with some agent of the CIA, because later we discovered that one of the Baucus assistants was a CIA informant.
One of Baucus's what? Students?
Assistant.
One of his students?
Lin was the chief, the senior scientist.
And he was
then the other scientist was Barvash.
Yeah.
Then we learned that he was a CIA informant.
How did you learn this?
Because Champion made some kind of trick. He phoned some people.
Whatever. Well, maybe Champion could be a liar about that.
No, he had some reason to. As a matter of fact, Barvash later left Baucus and now he's working for the American government.
Barwaj is.
Yeah.
So you think Barwaj was the
Barwaj,
not Lin?
Well, the CIA
informer.
Informer, yeah.
Okay. Barwaj, but not Lin.
No, he was a non-assigned. Because Lin get us in touch with the Chinese embassy. Because as the United States government didn't pay attention to this.
They tested at the Naval
They tried
Research Lab.
through Nancy Mitchell. They tried They tried to get in touch with the U.S. government.
Yes, through Nancy Mitchell and Dole.
Yeah.
They tried to get in touch with
But
the
the
U.S.
U.S. government didn't seem interested. So Thailand has an idea. Through Lin, they get in touch with the Chinese embassy, and they make contact with the Chinese embassy with the idea of having from China an island where to make the pilot plant for gold mining. And they knew that all the telephones of College Station were under control. So they made the contact with the Chinese embassy, the scientists of the Chinese embassy, openly with the telephone, and obviously the CIA was listening. So they looked, and the Chinese were interested. As a matter of fact, a whole group of Chinese scientists with the ambassador came to College Station.
Did they?
Yeah.
With the Chinese ambassador to the United States?
Yeah. No, I don't know. Anyway,
Some official.
Some
And
official.
Chinese scientists. Did you see these
A
people?
group, certainly. I mean, for the what? One woman and 7 men. They came in a group. They were all guested by Thailand with good amount. We made an enormous dinner
Right.
at the top of the Sheraton Hotel in College Station with Borges and so on, with all the Chinese group. And the Chinese were, because it was in that occasion that I showed to the Chinese the coupelle with the big piece of gold.
The 50-gram piece. You made it by
And
accident.
they-
You made it by accident.
In a certain sense, I made trying some tests which I suppose could be good in only one coupelle over 10, which were in the furnace, came out with this incredible. I was astounded. I couldn't believe. So I take it aside. I said, if
You knew
it's
for
true-
sure there was that much in there?
Oh yes,
Was it-
because I was all the weights and the measurement were made by me. So I knew that coupelle was containing 50 grams of lead. And after I found only a big amount of gold, about the same. Not only, but the coupelle was pervaded to the bottom of gold, which leaked on the surface of the furnace. So I was astonished because up to this moment.
Why do you think it worked that well?
Probably in some way because that formula was used also to make the philosopher's stone.
To make the what?
To make the philosopher's stone.
What's the philosopher's stone?
Is the catalyst which can transmute iron, lead, and mercury to gold. In this case, the transmutation happened with mercury, with lead into gold. And I knew that that way was, in the alchemic textbooks, I came to know that there are 3 ways to make the philosopher's stone. One is called the quick way, the rapid way. It takes about 1 week, while the other takes a month of work, and it's made through a furnace. So probably what I think, I'm still not thinking, probably I found by chance the right path to the third way. As a matter of fact, it came out as a normal way.
To the what? The right path to the...
To the philosopher's stone. For a case,
It was...
some part of the philosopher's stone fall
It just happened to
just in
work.
that coupé and transmuted all the
Right.
gold, all the lead into gold.
All of it.
After that, I had no occasion also to repeat the test for other reasons.
Right.
Anyway, the move with the Chinese came to success because the Chinese were really.
It had successful? It was successful?
Oh yeah, the Chinese were ready to give us an island.
The Chinese government?
Yeah, they said that there was an island near the border of China which should have been completely closed, but obviously nobody had the intention to go to China.
And they were going to make gold
yeah.
and control,
Exactly.
change the whole
Exactly.
world situation.
Fortunately, as was in the old Tilander, the telephones were under control. So 2 days later, the Washington office of the U.S. government called them. Yes, we are ready to see your.
We're ready to see it. Before they weren't interested.
Exactly. So
now
they stopped all the connection with the Chinese. I suppose that
Yeah.
the Chinese were very not
Amazed.
pleased
Yeah.
because they were needed to sign a contract.
Sign the agreement.
Signed the
Yeah.
agreement, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden, Etienne said everything is stopped.
Right.
And a few days later, we left all to Washington. Then in Washington, there's another long story because first we went to a lawyer to in that occasion before going to.
This is
to
all in
the-
'92.
What?
All this is happening in '92.
Yes, from March to September.
Right.
The story 6 months, but it was very intense because we were very active.
6-month period. Of
Several people, very,
madness.
very quick things happens. It's so long. It's long that I say to tell only the elementary takes
Takes 6 hours.
There are-
We've told a lot of it.
Yeah. Anyway, in Washington we came in touch with the big office, lawyer offices, very nice.
Why did you have to go to lawyers?
Because Tillander and Champion wanted to make on a clear basis their contract because they were
Contract with the Navy?
no
With the US government.
between themselves.
Oh,
Champion
between them, yeah.
wanted to
He has
define
right,
exactly
Right. So you went to that office,
to prepare the contract for themselves.
and you were just the.
Not only,
well,
but that same lawyer had to be employed with to keep the contract with the U.S. government. He was a
Also.
nice guy. He had a beautiful villa with a beautiful land.
Right.
What is the name of that English car? The Land Rover? No.
Jaguar?
No.
Whatever.
The most expensive.
Rolls Royce.
Rolls Royce. A beautiful Rolls Royce. A beautiful villa with the.
And so he was taking all this, the agreement between Tillander and the
yeah.
Champion.
So I followed because they always kept me together. Because in his opinion, I was already knowing too much, so it was better to keep me under control.
You were just along. You had no part of the deal.
No.
No.
I had only to be an assistant of in this program, an assistant and director of research with the Champion. For me, it was already enough.
Uh-huh.
If everything could have been true, it was more
Yeah.
than enough money for everybody.
Well, yeah, but right. The Chinese thing fell through. You went to you started talking to. Who were you talking to in the U.S. government?
U.S. government, I don't remember the name because the connections were taken through the Dole's office by Nancy Mason. Then,
But Dole got Dole.
established the contract with the U.S. government. Then, we were at the Hyatt Hotel in Washington, beautiful hotel, and there they came. We went with Borchris, me, Champion, Tillander, and there we came in touch. During an afternoon, come a few scientists from the scientific group of the U.S. government to discuss the question. And I was invited because, in reality, I was the only one who could understand.
Talk science.
Knows better.
Right.
So they spoke with me.
Right. Was
And,
Nagel involved in that group?
Yes, later,
Nagel?
but not directly. At the time,
There were some other scientists.
but Nagel was in the group of scientists which was present to the
Test.
test, which was made in Washington, in the Navy, in Napoli, in the
Right.
naval laboratory,
Right.
in the laboratories of the Navy.
But it was Annapolis.
And so these two scientists from the U.S. government were spoken with me. They were convinced of.
Yeah, let me just do it. Hold on.